vile, Mechon. If you think the Homs, the people of Bionis, are just waiting here for you to pick us off, you are sorely mistaken!
This video is not meant to bash on Xenoblade 1, it's more so made out of admiration for the game. It's just a fun little writing exercise, so please enjoy the following fanfic and maybe pick up some new headcanon along the way. The first addition that comes to mind is giving a proper explanation for why the Monado can't hurt people but somehow works on Tephra. Even though the explanation the game gives for its limitation is that the Monado can't cut beings that share the blood of Zanza, and since the Tephra are Zanza's antibodies, it really shouldn't have been able to hurt them prior to becoming a two-edged blade at Prison Island. Shulk could explain that this is due to the unique ether wavelengths emitted by humans. This would help expand on the progress of his Monado research, showing that he made more progress than only identifying multiple layers of glass. This would also help foreshadow the existence of the Apocrypha generator by introducing the concept of ether waves much earlier in the story. Its connection to human wavelengths would also help foreshadow Zanza's previous existence as Klaus. Some small dialogue additions after the Monado fails to hurt Fyro would be all it takes to establish this. Not only would this help better foreshadow future events but also expand on the progress of Shulk's research, thus reinforcing his scientific background which goes mostly unused in the story. Having gained such knowledge about the sword's limitations would also imply that Shulk must have secretly field-tested the Monado in the past, which would fit with him alluding to the fact that he had already experienced visions prior to the start of the game. Furthermore, it would also help characterize Shulk by showing that, even though he may be a shut-in, he still follows the call to action, thus making it more believable when he ends up being the one that takes charge in the pursuit of Metal Face.
Goodness.
Sorry. But is it true? The Monado really can't cut people?
The pattern in that circle. Or maybe it's a symbol. I think it shows which power the Monado has at the moment.
You think it's a symbol?
Well, if I can find a way to increase the number of symbols, I should.
I'm sure that's all very clever. But why were you more worried about a machine than me, Shulk?
Well, I just explained why.
That's not the point!
Sorry.
Look at you, worthless without the Monado.
Until I've scrapped each and every one of you!
So, of course I want to get my revenge!
Your blade, it did not cut deep enough.
No!
Shulk! Shulk!
What on Bionis happened there?
Ryan. Fiora.
Are you okay? Does it hurt?
No. Ryan, when you held the Monado, did you see anything?
You know, like a blue blade made of light came out. Same as just now.
I don't mean that. A feeling like time had stopped, and then...
Time had stopped.
So, was it only me who saw that?
That sounds strange. Is it another Monado thing?
Who knows? Anyway, no matter how good a sword it is, that's what happens when you hold it. Looks like Dunban really is the only one who can use it.
I won't let my brother use it ever again. Not after what it did to him.
Oh, Sorry. I didn't mean it like that.
Anyway, the point is I'm fine. To be honest, this has happened a few times before. I've been researching the Monado for a long time.
Shulk, don't act as if this is nothing.
Next we have the Hyangea ship that has somehow fused into Tephra Cave and is currently left completely unexplained. Colony 9 has always felt somewhat isolated from the outside world, its only route towards Gaur Plains being a door belonging to the previously mentioned Hyangea ship, which fused into the tunnels of Tephra Cave. This bizarre out-of-place Hyangea technology could easily be interwoven into the game's overarching narrative. Since the ancient Hyangea tried to crossbreed with Homs to remove their Telepia gene, Colony 9 could have been built by this ancient civilization as a sort of Homs reservoir, a place to create the Hyangea crossbreeds. This would explain the presence of the Hyangea ruins within Tephra Cave. Thematically it would show that Shulk and the rest were always defying destiny, or rather the will of an ancient creator, from the very moment they first left their hometown. When the gang collects the ether cylinders, the defense system could start a bioscan similar to the one later seen in the Hyangea tombs, with the robotic voice dropping some cryptic hints that build up the mystery of the Hyangea, thus weaving every step of the journey together more tightly. After initially granting them access to the ether deposit, as the system senses the absence of the Telepia genes, which in turn makes it safe for them to come into contact with high doses of ether, the system could then suddenly unleash the Guardian drones once Shulk touches one of the cylinders. While the players and the characters initially think that this was due to the incoming Mechan attack, it could later be revealed that the system actually reacted to Zanza's presence within Shulk, which was detected because Zanza temporarily came into contact with highly concentrated ether, which made the system notice his presence. Doing all this groundwork to expand on these ruins would pay off later in the story. In the game's art book there is a short story about Shulk finding an ancient Hyangea machine before the fight with Zanza which had the ability to regrow human organs. This is how Fire's original form actually becomes restored after Zanza's death uttering. It isn't due to Shulk's temporary power over Elvis, but due to a Deus Ex Machina device seen in a vision. This side story could be turned into a playable side quest that activates alongside the unique voice side quest with Tyrea after the events of Mechani's Core. This new quest could make use of the expanded Tephra Cave that unlocks at this point in the game but currently serves no purpose within the game's narrative. If Colony 9 was once built as a Homs reservoir by the ancient Hyangea, it would make sense if such an advanced medical device could be found deep within the ruins of Tephra Cave. The expanded Tephra Caves could lead into another part of the Hyangea ruins that was inaccessible before the cave-in. Here it could be revealed that the Guardian drones from the very start of the game actually reacted to Zanza, thus making the mystery that was built up from the very start of the game come full circle now that the true villain has been revealed.
Right here. Thanks for the help, Shulk. I'll start collecting them up. You two hold on a sec.
It's full of ether cylinders. Hey, why do we have to come all the way here to get them? Isn't there an ether cylinder fueling station in the colony?
Well, refining the ether takes a long time down there, and sometimes cylinderization fails. And there are so many cylinders here for us already. It's more reliable than making them ourselves.
Right. And Colony 9's anti-air batteries and mobile artillery are standardized for these cylinders, so they can be used straight away.
I see. You know, this place is in good condition considering it's ancient.
It might be that there's some form of technology being used to preserve it. It's just a shame we don't understand its secret.
Shulk?
But I'll solve it one day and show you. If it's just technology that someone created in the past, it's not incomprehensible. We'll come to understand it one day.
Are they Mechon?
I don't know. But it looks like we'll have to destroy them.
In that case, just leave them to me. What on Bionis were those? I've never seen anything like them.
Could they have been Mechon?
No. I think they were something left by the civilization that built this vehicle.
They didn't seem like Mechon to me. But why did they only show up now?
I don't know. But they were probably built to protect this place. They might have been activated in response to something. But I don't think that something could have been us.
Please, let's go back. I don't want to be here anymore.
Me neither. And we've already got the ether cylinders.
Huh? What's going on?
Listen, what is that?
That sound. In the sky! Oh, it's a...
This can't be!
No way.
Mechon!
Being able to hurt Mechon once they are toppled could also be integrated into the story as a result of Dickson and Shulk's research that could have led them to find structural weak points within the Mechon armor, thus weaving together story and gameplay elements. Since Dickson secretly works for Zanza, it would make even more sense if he was involved with finding this topple weakness, as he is also the one to develop the first anti-Mechon sword for Dickson. This would also make use of Shulk's scientist backstory and combine it with his fighting style. After Fyra's death, it could be made more obvious that no corpses or body parts are left behind when the Mechon are eating people. This would make Fyra's return later in the story feel like less of an spoil, and also reinforce Shulk's need for revenge due to the lack of closure that comes without the opportunity to give her a proper burial. It would also be neat if players had to walk through Colony 9 and speak with Dunban instead of seeing their conversation in a flashback. Having the player walk through and experience the aftermath of the Mechon attack for themselves would strengthen the player's connection with Shulk's story.
Everyone! Get away right now!
Fiora!
The game already mentioned Shulk's strange dreams that are tied to Zanza, however this idea could be used to much greater effect. For example, Shulk could experience twisted nightmares, bastardized version of his memories with Fyra. The dialogue in these scenes could feel wrong, with Fyra suddenly blaming her death on Shulk's inability to use the Monado. These dreams could be similar to the alternate reality scene at the end of Xenoblade 2. However, while the players and Shulk think that these dreams are caused by his recent trauma, in reality these dreams could later be revealed to have been corrupted versions of Zanza's own memories leaking into Shulk's subconsciousness as Zanza is nearing his reawakening. So the dream scene of Shulk and Fyra talking about his Monado research could later be revealed to have actually been influenced by a similar conversation Klaus once had with Galio while they were studying the conduit in Elysium. This way the backstory of Xenoblade could be easily expanded upon and make perfect sense within the already existing framework of the story, without the need for a third entry in the series. Furthermore, Shulk's subconsciousness being influenced by Zanza and him eventually breaking free from Zanza's influence would perfectly align itself with the game's core theme. The truth behind these dreams could be revealed when Alvis reawakens Shulk, so Shulk's rebirth would require him to literally reclaim his own consciousness from Zanza. This scene could play out similarly to how Tephra helps Cloud restore his memory in Final Fantasy VII.
Fiora.
Ah, the breeze feels so good.
Yeah. I'd forgotten what it feels like. I never thought it could be so quiet here.
You're spending too much time with Ryan. You're getting used to all the noise he makes.
Yeah, maybe.
It's so peaceful. You know, Shulk, I hope every day can be like this, always.
After they leave Colony 9 behind, Shulk and Rian could notice that the dead merchants they find within Tephra Cave are from a guild belonging to Colony 6. They could also notice how light the merchants are traveling, and that they wouldn't have been able to turn a profit visiting Colony 9 with such few goods to sell. This would hint that the merchants must have left in a hurry and that they actually tried to flee from Colony 6, thus foreshadowing the invasion of the other colony. Shulk proposing to return them to the Bionis could also be played as something a bit more compulsive and slightly out of character, while hand-waving it away by saying that it is likely due to Fire's unceremonious death. In reality, this need to return them to the Bionis could have been influenced by Zanza wanting to absorb their ether back into the Bionis.
What the? Look at the emblem. They're traders from Colony 6. No wonder it's been so long since the last delivery.
Ryan, their injuries.
They weren't made by no Mechon. It was probably the monsters that live here. Man, that's grim. I don't want to go like this. Not even killed by Mechon, just some monsters in a cave.
They probably had families. Children.
Maybe. It wouldn't surprise me. But why'd you say that?
Oh, no reason. Ryan, shouldn't we return them to the Bionis?
Huh? Oh, right. What's born from the Bionis is returned to the Bionis. That's the way of the Homs. That was way harder than I thought it'd be. I'm just about ready to collapse.
Let's take a rest. If the monsters in here killed all these traders, we need to be at our best. I'm wide awake, so I'll take first watch.
Thanks, man. The nap will do me good.
To further empathize Shulk's role as a scientist, he could notice that the Mechon altered the mining equipment within the ether mines, and that the facility is now siphoning the Bionis ether and reroutes it towards Sword Valley. This would not only introduce hints towards Egil's starvation tactics, but also add more weight to the events in the ether mines, by turning the whole thing, from a seemingly unconnected side quest, into a major strategical blow against Egil's war efforts by stopping one of his major ether siphoning operation, making the sequence mirror chapter 4 of Xenoblade 2, where the seemingly awful and pointless banner subplot becomes interwoven with the Blade Bots and Jin's strategies to counteract Amalthus, thus further reinforcing the similarities between the two parallel running timelines of Xenoblade 1 and 2. The visual storytelling of the ether mines already implies that the Mechon are harvesting the ether from the area, but it would be nice to have some actual confirmation for it while building up anticipation for Sword Valley in the process.
What's he talking about?
Oh yes! It's good to see fresh meat on the table. These colony folk just didn't fill me up!
Gado. The others.
Come on, boys! Dinner's ready!
There's a bit of a plot hole with Dunban's return, which is pretty well hidden by the fact that faced Mechon don't make a return in the story until the Monado is powered up at Prison Island. Dunban's anti-Mechon sword should technically have worked against Metal Face since it is not limited by the Monado's can't cut people restriction. I think it would be interesting if the weapon was actually shown to be somewhat effective against faced Mechon. Since the sword clones are mass-produced faces, it would make sense if the anti-Mechon weapon cut through their inferior mass-produced armor while only having a minor effect on Metal Face's unique frame. Dunban still keeping up with Metal Face would explain Munter's mental breakdown, which finally makes him speak up only to mock the group in an effort to protect his fickle pride. The existence of a workable anti-Mechon weapon would also more naturally lead into Metal Face's upgraded armor, which he receives sometime after this point in the story. Having Dunban featuring Zord clones would not only reinforce what an absolute shed he is, but it would also humble Shulk, who couldn't even defeat Turinga single Zord with the Monado. No longer sure if it was really the Monado's limitations or his own, Shulk could now question his own shortcomings, turning to the Monado can't hurt faced Mechon mentality, which the game displays most of the time, and changing it into I can't get the Monado to hurt faced Mechon, thus kick-starting Shulk's personal growth. If this would ever so slightly shift the blame of Fire's death from the Mechon to his own weakness, His decision to spare mum her later on in the story would feel like much less like an Aspel and much less cringe. This event could then open up a new side arc in which Dunban teaches Shulk about the Monado. While the weapon rejects Dunban, this doesn't mean that he, the guy who won an entire freaking war by himself, can't teach Shulk some new tricks about the Monado. This could easily be interwoven with the scene of Shulk asking Dunban for permission to continue using the Monado.
Any way you slice it, the Monado ain't gonna work, boy. Didn't work then, won't work now. Now, time to cut you down to size! Hey, what?
Lads, now, let him have it, beast!
Dunban!
How did you...
Sorry to have kept you. Looks like we were just in time.
While initially unsuccessful, their training could then later click with Shulk when Alvis teaches him how to fight the Telethia. So Shulk learning Monado Purge could be the result of his training with Dunban, which could take place at Satorl Marsh, and Alvis' teachings about the nature of the Monado when they encounter the Telethia at Machna Forest. This would make Shulk's growth feel much more earned, and Macker Dunban integral to Shulk's skill development. It just seems very unbelievable and Marisuish that Dunban has nothing left to teach Shulk. If Bionis' shoulder was put into the main game instead of being exclusive to the epilogue, and placed between Machna Forest and Eryth Sea, this side arc could later resolve in a training scene similar to the one featured in Torn of the Golden Country. This would be the perfect timing for such a training scene, as it would also include Melia and Riki and thus flesh out the character dynamics within the group. This would also give us a nice before and after by juxtaposing this character focus scene with the ones that take place at the Fallen Arm. This way we could have a character-focused scene both before and after all the major story points that transpire throughout Prison Island and Sword Valley, thus giving the players a much better understanding of how these events have affected and shaped all of the party members. But let's talk more about the Shoulder's implementation later, and let's go back to Satorl Marsh for now. Shulk being guarded by the Telethia could be the reason for Aegil's decision to divert his attention to Alchemith and Prison Island, to strike at the source of the shield that guards the Monado. This could then play into the Telethia absorbing ether from Machna Forest to strengthen themselves and prepare for the battle at Eryth Sea, thus turning the Machna Forest events from a random side quest into part of a secret arms race between the Mechon and the forces following Zanza's plan. In other words, the Telethia could invade the Machna Forest because they need the ether to prepare for the Mechon invasion of Prison Island. Since Zanza Arglist can see the future, he could have ordered the Telethia to prepare for this battle. His need for this would also retroactively be a hint at Zanza's lack of omnipotence.
You did well. But what of the boy? Ah. Well then, there is much to be done.
One aspect of Satorl Marsh that could be greatly improved upon is the random ceremony that summons the broken elevator, where the player has to collect 4 pointless orbs. The orbs could be switched with ancient stone tablets that contain information about the history of the High Enchia, akin to the stone tablets found in Breath of the Wild Zor region. These ancient tablets, withered by the elements, could contain cryptic hints about the High Enchia, which would not only help flesh out the High Enchia but also build up mystery for what awaits the players at the top of the Bionis. From a story perspective, this ceremony at Satorl Marsh could easily be combined with the revised Colony 9 lore. If Colony 9 served as a sort of gene pool purification facility for the ancient High Enchia, it could have been custom for the High Enchia born there to journey to the top of the Bionis and prove their worth in a coming-of-age ceremony pilgrimage that ends in them joining the Society of Alchemith waiting at the top of the Bionis. Having to learn about their connection to Zanza through the stone tablets in Satorl Marsh, as they make their way up the Titan, would facilitate Alchemith as a society of individuals aware of their cursed blood. Of course, the High Enchia have clearly declined since those ancient times, as all their technology in Colony 9 and Satorl Marsh now lies in ruins. so Shulk and his gang would only find cryptic clues of the Hygia's past remaining in Satorl Marsh. Uncovering these hints and learning about Eryth Sea's connection to the mystery of the Monado could then be used to reinvigorate Shulk's spirit after doubting his skills because of their last encounter with Metal Face. It would also make more sense if Shulk had to actually repair the broken elevator at the end of Satorl Marsh, using his brain to understand the ancient technology of a people that seemed to have a connection to the Monado, and using the knowledge gained throughout their journey would make it feel much more earned when Shulk unlocks Monado Purge at Magna Forest. Playing into Shulk's personal strengths and tying them to the development of his understanding of the Monado would help make it feel more like Shulk is actually forging his own path by relying more on his intellect, rather than strength and swordsmanship like Dunban would when wielding the Monado.
Huh? The lift don't work.
Looks like it's been broken for a while. We'll have to find another way up.
Another way? You don't mean climb up there?
We may have to.
Come on, you can't be serious. Why'd someone build a lift that don't work?
No complaining. Let's start looking for a place we can climb up. Ryan.
Ready to go, Shulk?
Yeah. But just hold on a minute.
What is it, Shulk?
It's about the Monado. I'd like to ask your permission to use it a little longer.
Why ask me?
The Monado was your sword, but I need it to achieve my goal. So...
Don't sweat it. You are far more skillful at wielding that thing than I ever was. Keep it. It's yours. Besides, I have a new sword. That old coot had the decency to forge this for me. I owe it to him to make the most of it.
Dunban...
You fought your way this far. That is proof enough the Monado has accepted you. Don't take my word for it. Believe in yourself, Shulk.
Believe in myself?
Never lying down. Never giving up. That's our pride and strength as Homs. And we have to make sure those metal monsters know it.
You're right.
Time to move, people. This prison island Shulk saw in his vision isn't getting any closer.
So Shulk unlocking Monado Purge would become a combination of his training with Dunban, his understanding of the Hygia technology, which serves as a representation for his personal growth, and his encounter with Elvis, rather than just feeling like a free power-up given to him by God because he's a perfect Marisu. While the party simply thinks that the monsters must have stolen these items, the Telethia would in actuality have been her retainers, transformed into Telethia due to the immense ether burst that was unleashed in their battle against the beast. At Magna Forest, rather than finding Melia by pure happenstance, their chance encounter could be made less random by having the party see the explosion caused by Melia's fight with the Telethia as they enter the forest, instead of conveniently finding her by the roadside. The Telethia Shulk fights afterwards could also drop items belonging to Melia's retainers, hinting at the connection between Hygia and Telethia.
Aisel, Hogard, Garin, Damil! Bestow the light of your life unto me!
They're here.
Huh?
The Monado emits a particular ether wavelength in its ground state. It must have drawn them.
Huh?
Since Bionis' shoulder would take place between Magna Forest and Eryth Sea, we'd have to find a convenient excuse to have Elvis accompany our party throughout their journey to Alchemith, rather than having him suddenly vanish. His potential intel on Arglys and Aegel's backstory would be vital in expanding the game's mythos. As such, Albus, as the seer of the High Engia royal family, could have had a vision about the danger Melia was in and actually went to Mechna Forest because of this. This would make him less obviously mysterious and special and give him some actual agency to be in the area, by immediately establishing his role as seer and his connection to Alchemist, making the storytelling at least somewhat more subtle than the sledgehammer it currently beats the audience with.
That was amazing.
I suggest you stop staring. The sword is yours to wield.
What was that light?
The Monado does not control itself. You control it.
I control it. By the light of the Monado. I will stop them.
To bring all the party members together in a more natural way, rather than just literally getting Riki thrown at you, Riki could be introduced in a more interesting way, which not only ends up bringing the whole gang together but also incorporates his thief trickster-like moveset and makes said moveset feel less random. Melia asking Shulk and the others for help against the Tephra feels rather unbelievable, since the game focuses on how abrasive she is towards the other characters at first due to her sheltered upbringing, instead of having her open up to the others unnaturally quickly, which feels completely out of character, and more like Shulk bullying her into letting them help her because the story needs to progress. Riki could instead go after the Tephra by himself, thereby serving as a catalyst for the formation of the group. Melia's more timid and reclusive nature could remind Riki of his adopted son Kino, and so knowing that she would never ask strangers for help, Riki could be stealing the Monado to defend his home against the Dino Beast, in so doing forcing the group to come together, as Melia would be the one to figure out what's going on, thus forcing her to finally entrust in Shulk and the others to go and save Riki. Since Riki is secretly a very emotionally intelligent person, which Future Connected retroactively makes very obvious, this little stunt of his could have been planned to unify the team and strengthen the group's bond through this little stunt, making him a sort of secret father figure for the group. This could be brought up again later during his conversation with Dunban at the Fallen Arm and expand one of the better character scenes in the game, thus making Riki more of an actual character rather than just a walking meme. Upon finding out that Riki and the Monado went missing, and seeing that Shulk is too stupid to look after the Monado would also force Albus into action, both from his position as Alchemist Seer and his true nature as the source of the Monado. Instead of escaping into the forest, the Tephra could also retreat directly to Bionis' shoulder, if it was woven into the main story and used to replace the weird out-of-place teleporter at Mechna Forest.
Riki, why are you the Heropon?
Why? Because Chief Dunga chose Riki.
He chose you? So you weren't chosen from birth?
Friend, wrong. Chief chose by instinct.
By instinct?
Why, friend, surprised? Chief have sharp instinct. Chief be village seer.
So that's how you became the Heropon. Can't argue with that.
But he is kind of compact for a warrior hero.
Oh, Riki owe lots of monies to village. If Riki defeat Dino Beast, village promised to forget my debts. So Riki like being Heropon.
Riki trying to use the Monado against the Dino Beast should obviously result in him getting an over-the-top nosebleed akin to when Tora tried to resonate with a core crystal. This would allow Albus to give some exposition about the potential necessary to wield the Monado, explaining why it rejected Dunban but works for both him and Shulk. This potential within Shulk, of course, in actuality being the presence of Zanza. Not only would this quirky side quest give Albus an opportunity to drop some juicy lore, but it would also make for a more natural forming of the core cast, while also making Riki seem like less of a joke in the process and having his trickster moveset make more sense. However, most important of all, it would naturally result in Albus accompanying the group throughout Bionis' shoulder, which would open up so many opportunities to expand on the backstory of the Giants and the Monado.
Dino Beast! Hereupon Riki ready for round 2. Hey, fight over already? No, Riki not no!
I'm afraid it's all finished.
We couldn't have done it without you, brave little hereupon.
Oh, Riki brave! Rhine also a little brave. Riki happy?
With Alvis following the group, the possibilities for the Bionis shoulder section would be endless, and every in-depth discussion of it would just come off as really bad and obnoxious fanfiction, as all the other parts of this video are just based on connecting already existing plot points or fleshing out already existing scenes. For this section I'll just keep it very short and simple, abstaining from adding any more filler. Tier Monster of the Week story arcs, as the game already has way too many of those. To resolve the training arc between Shulk and Dunban, which we established earlier in Satorl Marsh, Bionis shoulder could feature a camping training scene that parallels the one we see in Torn of the Golden Country. Shulk could spar off against Dunban, the former wielder of the Monado, while also being coached by Alvis, positioning Alvis behind Shulk in the same way Mithra stands behind Adam. This scene could then later be contrasted against the character moments at the Fallen Arms section later in the game, thus giving us a nice before and after for the crucial Alchemist and Sword Valley arcs, giving us a better view at how the following events will have shaped these characters. Seeing Shulk keep up with Dunban would also more naturally lead into Rian realizing that Shulk has surpassed him, and then have him resolve this minor character arc later in the Fallen Arm. Rian feeling useless for all of 5 minutes comes absolutely out of nowhere, so front-loading his realization of Shulk's growth would make it feel more believable when he brings it up again later at the Fallen Arm.
If only we could find Dunban.
Yeah, he'll be blubbering at the sight of us.
I don't think he'd ever cry in front of you two.
So he does cry?
When no one's watching.
Yep. He's always been like that. He's a big softie, but he hates anyone seeing it.
I never knew.
Nope, I don't believe it.
Take it easy. I'm okay. I want to see my brother. Let's go, Shulk.
If you can't walk, I'll carry you.
I'm much heavier now.
I've been pumping my guns.
Amazing, Laura. Even when I foresee your movements, you counter me instantly.
I couldn't do it without Hayes' power. What about you? I don't see you using Mithra's hidden ability.
And what if we did?
Well, if you did, I just have to bring out my original blade.
Using Bionis shoulder to expand on the backstory of the Giants could also be used to cleverly enhance the characterization of both Zanza and Dickson. Shulk and Alvis could visit the place from Eagle's flashback, where Alvis expands on Arglis' backstory. This would make sense, as he would basically be telling Shulk about the Monado's previous owner, and further teaching him about the sword through example. The easiest way to give both Dickson and Zanza a lot more depth would be to reveal that the technology that the Mechonic had brought to the lesser developed species resulted in some kind of tragedy on the Bionis. However, this section should not reveal that the technology that led to said tragedy was handed to the Giants by the Mechonic. This should be kept as a twist for later in an era, though, where Meneth already reveals this fact. Instead, Alvis could simply say that the Giants were destroyed by their own technology, the same ancient technology Shulk has been studying throughout his journey, and which helped expand his understanding of the Monado. This scene could mirror the conversation between Mithra and Poppy, as it draws on a similar subject matter, the Giants being destroyed by a technology handed to them which they didn't understand and eventually led to their self-destruction. Could also draw some parallels to Klaus and his connection to the Conduit. Giving such a backstory to the Giants would also help flesh out Dickson, as both a giant and a scientist that has witnessed how the advancement of a species will inevitably lead to self-destruction. He would naturally connect with Zanza, or rather Klaus, who experienced the exact same scenario which caused him to activate the Conduit in the first place.
Did you think it was just a myth?
I used to only believe in what I could see. My home, my friends, the Monado itself. I knew those things were real.
But when you took the Monado in your hand, you gained the ability to see that which was not meant to be seen.
Are you saying I should stop?
You are a fluctuation. As a fluctuation, you exist outside the results of your predictions.
Poppy and Mithra are the same?
Yes. Kinda.
But if Poppy destroys the world, Master Pun might get destroyed too. Maybe Mithra should destroy Poppy.
Poppy? Tora created you. You could never do something like that. I know it.
But...
Hey, let's make a promise.
A promise?
Yes. That's right, Poppy. Promise that if you ever look like you're about to destroy the world, I will do what you asked of me. But, in return, can you promise me something?
What would you like from Poppy? Mithra is scared of destroying the world too?
Well, I'm doing my best to stop it coming to that. It's something else. It's...
Huh?
No, actually, nothing. I don't have a request right now. Can I think it over?
Of course. Then let's promise.
What's this?
Master Pun taught it to Poppy. He said it's not on promise ritual. Lift hand up in air, then boop, together.
I see.
I can sense Dickson.
If Zanza, who resided within Arglis, revealed his past to Dickson, it would only be natural for Dickson to become his disciple. This would also show that Zanza truly desired friendship at one point, as he went out of his way to bond with Dickson over their shared misery. This would also change Zanza's reason to reset the world from just being a completely psychopath to a psychopath that genuinely believes he is doing the right thing by saving mankind from itself. Thus, as God, he sees it as his duty to continuously reset the world once humanity begins to walk upon that path to self-destruction once more. In other words, each time the beings of Bionis become too advanced for their own good, he hits the reset button, just as he did in Mortha. Because Dickson would have thus witnessed some ancient calamity caused by Mechana technology, Dickson would end up sharing the sentiment with Zanza, and thus become his disciple. This way he isn't simply evil for the sake of being evil, and his desire for the power of a god would be redefined as something more tangible, like the power to save mankind from itself, which is exactly the kind of godlike power Klaus acquired through the conduit. Now Dickson fighting Shulk would make much more sense, because if they die by the hands of Zanza, their souls will at least still become reincarnated within the infinite cycle of destruction and rebirth, rather than perishing in the, what Dickson perceives as doomed world, which is the future Shulk is trying to create for mankind. A future where Klaus can no longer save mankind from itself.
Just as I expected. Wouldn't have it any other way. I've been working for Lord Zanza since the beginning. I raised you purely so he could live on.
I know. And I must thank you for granting me such power. It's all down to you that I'm standing here, ready for you now.
Enough talk, boy.
After this lore dump about the giants and some new character moments, we finally get to Eryth Sea, and there isn't really anything I would change for a long time, which just goes to show how disconnected most of the stuff between Colony 9 and Alchemeth is from the rest of the story. If we ignore future connected, then I think it would be more interesting if Lorethia was usurped by Tyrea as one of Zanza's disciples over the course of the story. As it stands, the Hyentia politics and the Bionite order along with Tyrea herself just randomly disappear from the story after being built up so heavily throughout Eryth Sea. Since all the other disciples have a close connection to the party, Lorethia feels extremely out of place by comparison, so having Tyrea take her spot would have helped giving a more proper resolution to Melia's character arc, as Tyrea already belongs to the Bionis order and has an obsession with the Hyanttia bloodline. It would make sense if she joined Zanza, as he could return the Telethia to their human forms, thus siding with him would allow Tyrea to save the Hyanttia race by securing their reincarnation into the next cycle, which would give Tyrea her perceived rightful place as their new leader in the next era. Larithio already says that she can't stand Dickson, so I wouldn't put it past Dickson to pull an epic gamer move and dab all over Larithia by getting Tyrea on his side. The two could somewhat bond over the shared history of the giants and the pure-blooded ancient Hyanttia, which the Bionis order would naturally worship as being superior to their current existence. Having Melia defaturing Tyrea and thus decide the ideological future of the Hyanttia would also round out Melia's arc without the need of the future connected epilogue. But if we ignore Tyrea, then the only change I can think of until the final confrontation with Metalface at Galahad Fortress is that Shulk and Rian could actually acknowledge that the technology inside the Hyanttia tombs is identical to the stuff they encountered all the way back at Mel Ruins, where they collected the ether cylinders at the start of the game.
Go forth and rule, my descendant.
So the spirits look favorably upon you. Explain yourself. Only Imperials are permitted to enter this place. I am the subject of Her Highness the First Consort. I need no permission. Mother's subject? No impure child of the Second Consort has the right to refer to the First Consort as Mother. A filthy Hom's half-breed has no right to the throne.
So let's jump to the most cringe-worthy moment the Xeno franchise has ever produced, the moment Shulk unironically says if you kill Mumker you'll be just like him, which magically gets resolved by the most deus ex machina bullshit imaginable, just so Shulk can remain a perfect Mary Sue that can do no bad deeds. Just have Mumker be crushed by the debris before Shulk can temporarily lose all his brain cells. Problem solved. Also, it would be pretty key if there was a side quest at the Fallen Arm that lets you forge a new weapon for Dunban out of the remains of Metalface.
Get out of my way, Shulk!
It's Mumker! He's not a Mechon!
Have you forgotten everything he's done? Where is your killer instinct? Now is the time!
I hate him, Dunban! For what he did to Fiora and the Emperor! So of course I want to get my revenge!
With that we jump all the way to Eryth. Minut's exposition could be expanded to reveal that the technology the Machina shared with the less advanced beings of Bionis is what caused the catastrophe I mentioned earlier, which would naturally leads into Arglist taking the Monado and becoming possessed by Zanza, making the original conflict that started everything less cartoonishly black and white. This flashback could also expand on Egel's backstory, perhaps showing that he was once a scientist that studied Minut's Monado, strengthening his parallels to Shulk, which the game already tries to establish. Perhaps this research could be the key to the creation of the Mechon, which he uses for his revenge against Zanza. If the Mechon were the product of Egel's Monado research, the Mechon would technically be very similar to the Artifices. The Artifices were originally created by the Trinity processor using its connection to the conduit to create autonomous defense mechanism for Elysium. So the Artifices are actually a product of Ontos, Logos and Numa, rather than something that was created by human hands. If Ontos Alvis and thus by extension all of the Monarchs, and their special tie to the conduit, function anything similar to the Zohar and Xenosaga, then it would make sense for Ontos, and thus also Minut's Monado, to hold data within it that somewhat resembles the esoteric concept of the Akashic Records. In other words, the Monado would store data relating to ideas that exist within the collective unconsciousness, so it would make sense if Egel would have found data relating to the Artifices within Minut's Monado, which then led to the creation of the Mechon, thus making the Mechon pseudo-artifice replicas. It would change nothing about the existing story of the game, yet still give some more context to the Mechon for those who have played both games. It would also help make the Mechon a bit more than just random unexplained killer bots that are never really expanded upon. If the Mechon were indeed a sort of artifice replica, this would also be a much better explanation for why the Monado can destroy them. Instead of the current explanation, which basically boils down to Zanza made it really sharp so it cuts really well, now all of a sudden the Monado would literally be the control key to the Mechon, without changing anything about the already existing story. This would also better explain why someone without Zanza's blessing, like Dickson, was still able to use it against the Mechon.
The Mechona generously shared the fruits of their civilization with the peoples of the Bionis. They believed their two worlds would grow hand in hand. Then, a terrible fate descended on them from above.
This would also explain what Egil does with all of the ether the Mechonus absorbs from the Bionis, using the ether leaking out of the Bionis, and thus by extension the conduit, to create the Mechon artifice replicas. So Egil is not just starving the Bionis of ether, but also simultaneously strengthening his own forces, killing two birds with one stone, which would make his Kikaku closer to 200 IQ rather than just 100 IQ. Of course, the connection between Mechon and artifices should only be noticeable to observant players, while the characters themselves would stay completely oblivious to the overarching meta-narrative, to preserve the standalone nature of both games while still throwing a bone to the players that care about the overarching story. Egil studying Meeneth's Monado would also help better contrast him with Shulk, as they are both scientists researching their Titan's Monado, similar to how Rex and Amalthus were both salvagers. As the game already tries to contrast Shulk and Egil, we might as well try to expand on this thematic core element of the story.
I don't understand.
Perhaps you need me to put things more simply. All life on Bionis exists purely to feed its master.
Vania joining the party after Egil's death would be an absolute no-brainer. If this video wasn't trying to stay true to the original story, I'd actually prefer it if Fyra died along with Meeneth, or rather that Meeneth was just using Fyra's dead body the entire time. But since this rewrite tries to stay true to the original, we'll just keep it as is.
And what of you, Vanea? You would side with those of Bionis and attack me. You have forfeited your right to exist.
Perhaps. If that is to be my fate, I gladly accept, brother. As would any of the villagers.
Shulk's revival could lean into the previously mentioned nightmares he had. Alvis could help Shulk break free from Zanza's influence, thus pathing the way for Shulk to find his own Monado. Here the story could start to hint at Zanza's origin, as Shulk makes his way through these nightmares as Alvis tries to restore his soul. The scenario could play out somewhat similar to the alternate reality dreams that appear in Xenoblade 2. Shulk could walk through nightmares he experienced throughout the game, memories that were corrupted by Zanza's consciousness leeching off of his life force. In other words, Shulk would have to restore his own subconsciousness by removing Zanza's influence. This could then be used to hint at the true nature of Zanza instead of having a giant exposition dump at the very end of the game. The visuals of the scene could play out somewhat similar to the data corruption effects in the Rojas section of Kingdom Hearts 2, while also being reminiscent of the famous FF7 sequence. This sequence, feeling like Shulk bug fixing himself, would play into both his scientific personality and Alvis's nature as a processor unit. Upon his revival, Shulk could even receive an X-shaped mark on his chest similar to Rex. The mechanic of how Alvis revives Shulk really only makes sense in the context of Aegis sharing their core crystal, otherwise it's really just a complete despoil.
Succeed, and follow a new path.
Alvis, are you?
You already know. You know what I am, and what you must do.
After that, it is time to address the biggest missed opportunity within the entire game, and it is seriously baffling to me how they missed out on such an obvious payoff. Instead of the Machina handing Shulk a Monado replica, which just opens up so many questions and plot holes, like, why didn't they make one before? Why doesn't literally every single character use one? How did the Machina just casually recreate a fabric of the universe rewriting machine? It would make so much more sense if Shulk had to build the Monado replica himself. Not only would it be the ultimate payoff to his entire journey, it would also be a much more meaningful version of a true Monado if it was something he had to actually forge himself by using his already pre-established character traits that just go completely unused throughout the game. Sorry, but this is the type of stuff that makes me wholeheartedly believe that Xenoblade 1 has the worst story of all the Xeno games. While still a good, albeit generic battle shonen, it just fails to live up to its own potential one too many times. Of all the Xeno games, it is the one with the most potential but also the most wasted potential. It could easily be the best one, but in the end it just fails to execute. If Shulk actually had to build the Monado replica himself, this would also mean that the other characters actually had to defend Colony 6 by themselves instead of jobbing instantly without the help of Shulk. It's basically every time Shulk isn't on the screen, all the other characters should ask, where is Shulk? Levels of Marisu. Them being able to actually defy fate by themselves would make it feel much more earned when they later form the true Monado out of the power of friendship in the final fight against Zanza. Alternatively, we could circumvent this conundrum and have Shulk use his intellect instead of a Monado replica to fight the Telethia that invade Colony 6. If we want Shulk to have an epic return moment but also keep the Monado replica aspect, there are two solutions I could think of. One, he builds the first replica prototype as a precaution after the Monado shocks him inside Mechonis core. 2, Shulk could pull a 200 IQ move with one of the Mechanspheres Alvis and company were studying to help the others defend Colony 6 and then go build the replica afterwards. Since Fire's body is running on the remnants of Meneth's power, perhaps this special property of her machine body could be connected to the function of Shulk's Monado replica. So theoretically, Fire could function as a quasi-blade for Shulk's blade weapon. While not literally being a driver and blade, the special bond between Shulk and Fire could still be somewhat representative of a similar function. This would also help explain their strange power-up and Chadstride moment in the fight with Dickson.
The future is ours to shape, Dickson! Always!
When will you learn you have no future? Face it! Your destiny is to die here!
What?
Shoot! Thank goodness you're here!
Damn, kid! So you're still alive! Attack! Destroy them! Ah!
As for Dickson, I already mentioned how his reasoning could be fleshed out, so there is really nothing more to add to his send-off.
I'm done. I'm going home.
Dickson!
I just wanted the power of a god. This martyr stuff's not for me.
Why? Why can I not see any further? Now that I possess both Monados, I should be at one with the passage of fate. Why does the vision end here? Huh? So Dickson has passed. Eryth too. How can this be? Are Telethia growing weak? How could they be defeated by such worthless mortals?
This world belongs to you all. Create a world with no need for gods.
A world that has no need for gods. There is no world without a god. This world belongs to me!
So let's move on to the finale, as we already revealed hints towards Zanza's origins as Klaus when Shulk rids himself of his influence as Alvis revives him. The Klaus and Galia flashback might as well be put before the fight with Zanza, so the memory space section could easily be expanded to have the characters walk into a data recreation of Elysium once they moved past Saturn and the other planets, rather than stopping right in front of planet Earth. This section could then show us the full original versions of the memories between Klaus and Galia which became mingled with Shulk's own subconsciouses. This memory of Klaus could give all the backstory we still miss about the experiment, like expanding on the Saviorite rebels. So instead of making an extra game dedicated to the more of the backstory, all of this could have also been easily integrated into the already existing framework of Xenoblade 1, and make Zanza more of an actual character in the process. Then the strange orange vortex which serves as the final boss arena could have been swapped with the Dream of Elysium area, which was the virtual reality environment in which the Trinity Core processor's artificial intelligences were raised. Alternatively, the fight could still begin in the vortex area, but when Zanza switches the environment to an endless ocean, that ocean could be replaced with the fields of Elysium. While Shulk can be heard by Klaus during the final boss of Xenoblade 2, having Zanza hear Rex wouldn't make sense, as it always seemed like only the architect version of Klaus is aware of his other half's existence. Instead, when Zanza tries to glimpse the future before the final battle, the vision could simply end with him hearing Klaus' voice from the other universe say the time is nigh. This is probably just me, but instead of having the Monado replica transform into the Monado 3, I would prefer a more simplistic transformation, similar to the one of the Monado Rex in Future Connected, and just have the weapons ring section open up to reveal the god kanji, and then have it get the sick-ass exhaust burns it has in Future Connected. But that's just my personal preference for more simplistic upgrades.
What's important isn't whether you can see the future or not. It's the will to make a choice, and the strength to seize your destiny. Our time has come. Our destiny is our own!
That's simple.
Today, we use our power to fell a god, and then seize our destiny!
All that I am is fading. The memory of a god's existence, born from the chaos of creation. It is vanishing.
As we have now successfully expanded the Klaus and Galia backstory, I would just end the series right here, and just make the next game be completely and truly unconnected to Shulk's and Rex's games. Better to end on a high note than fuck the franchise into the ground with endless sequels. The series could then be ended with a short post-credit scene, zoomed out flat establishing shot a man and a woman waking up on a beach, the conduit half submerged into the ocean behind them, basically copying the ending shot of the end of Evangelion equals. Cut to black. I'm glad I could see you again, Galia. So basically Alvis usually conned its power to rebirth the two in a new universe, thus also giving a conclusion to Architect Klaus' redemption arc and following up on his I hope I can see you again, Galia, quote as shortly before his death. The end. That's it. Thanks for watching. Feel free to tell me how much you hated and how stupid I am in the comments section below.